Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. This is English Digest, and I am Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to talk about food, and
Yay!
More specifically, we're going to talk about dumplings,
Yum.
which you all are familiar with here in Taiwan. You've got boiled dumplings and steamed dumplings. And
fried dumplings, fried, Tom.
Oh, true.
Fried.
Yeah, the pot stickers, as they call them, 锅贴. I guess those technically are dumplings as well. But again, dumplings are all over the world, though, not just here in Taiwan and in China. You can get them in different versions in different countries, and that's what we're going to be talking about in the next couple of days.
Yeah, these are some of my favorite types of food. There are lots of different kinds of dumplings. I've had a couple of these. Of course, Tom and I have had all the ones that they make in Taiwan. You forgot the jinjiao. Those are good too. So,
right.
Yeah, those are fried and they're not quite guotie. They're different. They're a little bit fatter and juicier, and those are good too. But we're also going to talk about some dumplings that we make in the U.S., which are very different. And then there's the pierogi, which is very famous, and it's from Poland. So, yeah, this is a fun one. We're going to start by reading through the article, and then we'll be back to talk about some of these words and phrases. While every country's cuisine is different, many dishes exist in similar or related forms in multiple countries. For instance, many cultures produce their own version of dumplings. The English word dumpling, however, is used to classify many different things. Chinese jiaozi and xiaolongbao are referred to as dumplings, but so are baozi sometimes, despite the differences in form and preparation. Based on the following examples, you can decide for yourself whether all dumplings deserve to be classified together. In Central and Southern Asia, people have been filling pastry shells with meat and vegetables and then frying them for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. The Persian word Samosa is used for this kind of tasty, portable snack. It's great for long journeys, a fact that contributed to its spread from Persia into India, where it is known as a samosa and has been called a dumpling. Modern samosas are often sold by street vendors, but can also be found on restaurant menus. They are typically shaped like pyramids and filled with local Indian ingredients such as peas and potatoes. Samosas can be large, but to the west, on the other side of what was once Persia, dumplings are smaller. Turkish manta are diminutive pockets of lamb, onion, and spices that are boiled and served with yogurt or tomato sauce. They're such a beloved part of Turkish culture that making them as small as can be is an unofficial measure of a cook's ability. There's even an occasional belief, though an outmoded one, that a woman who can make manta small enough to fit 40 on a tablespoon has proved she's ready to marry.
Okay, let's get down to business and talk about the contents of our lesson for today. Again, it's our food unit, and we're going to be talking about dumplings. So here the title is One Word, Many Dishes, Dumplings Around the World. So dumpling, of course, is the word we use to refer to kinds of food that are like pockets with some kind of dough on the outside and then ingredients on the inside, some kind of filling on the inside. And of course, here in Taiwan, you've got dumplings in the Chinese version, but there are dumplings around the world as well, which we'll talk about today. So let's dive right in here and look at the first paragraph. It says, while every country's cuisine is different, many dishes exist in similar or related forms in multiple countries. So while, even though it is true that every country's food or cuisine is different, still we've got many dishes exist in similar forms or related forms in multiple countries. So here we've got the word multiple, which just means many. We've got the word dumpling, basically, but it can apply to different kinds of food in all sorts of different countries, but those things are still called dumplings.
Right. So here's an example. For instance, and that's another way just to write, for example, comma, for instance, many cultures produce their own version of dumplings. I can understand why, because dumplings taste so good that you would want to take that idea of dough and filling and then put the stuff inside that is, more typical of your own culture's cuisine, because everybody has different spices and tastes and smells and things like that. So here's an example. The English word dumpling, however it says, is used to classify many different things. We're using this word dumpling and applying it to very different things, although they seem to have some similarities, we could say. So how do you classify something? Well, you look at its characteristics, its qualities, and you kind of put it in the group where it belongs best. So you can classify things based on what they are, what they look like. In the library, we have different codes on our books that tell us what part of the library they need to go into, where they're shelved. You can classify or sort things based on their characteristics. Here we're saying, yeah, there's this English word dumpling, and they all kind of go together in some ways, but they're not exactly the same. They're different versions of each one of these dumplings.
Basically, what this sentence is telling us is that the word dumpling is kind of vague. It refers to, generally speaking, that kind of food that has some kind of dough on the outside, but of course the versions are quite different depending on where you are. So let's talk about the word dumpling in English. The English word dumpling, however, is used to classify many different things. Chinese jiaozi and xiaolongbao are referred to as dumplings, but so are baozi sometimes, despite the differences in form and preparation. So to foreigners, maybe baozi might seem like a dumpling. You guys might think, dumpling, baozi? That's not a dumpling. 差很多嘞. But still, according to some people, they might think, well, they're kind of the same. Xiaolongbao, shuijiao, jiaozi, etc. They all seem kind of the same, at least in foreigners' eyes, even though here in Taiwan, you'll probably see distinct differences between them. So again, the word dumpling is kind of vague. It refers to all sorts of things. And there's the term refer to, which means you call something using a certain term or certain words. So you could have a friend, for example, who's really strong. So you could say, hey, my friend John is referred to as the giant. He's big and strong, and we all like to hang around him because we feel protected.
I wanted to mention here, if you see a baozi, which is a lot bigger, or the jianjiao, they're bigger too. You'll hear foreigners call them buns as well.
True, yeah.
Yeah, a fried bun, steamed bun, B-U-N. But you also will hear them called dumplings too. So yeah, if they're more round and big, I call them by their Chinese name because I've lived here too long, but you'll hear foreigners who don't speak Chinese sometimes refer to them as buns. And that's because that's what it says in the dictionary when you look it up. So they'll get to know the real names after they've been in Taiwan for a while, but until then, they'll call them dumplings or buns. So yeah, we have different kinds of dumplings or buns in Taiwan. I love them all. They're all delicious. So sometimes, as Tom said, the jiaozi and the xiaolongbao, they're referred to as dumplings. If you refer to something, you point it out or you call it by that thing. You're kind of directing attention to that thing. They're referred to or called dumplings. If you change referred to with called, then you wouldn't use as. So they're called dumplings. You wouldn't say called as dumplings. Sometimes I hear people use that phrase. Don't use that phrase. Referred to as something, but call it something. So sometimes baozis are also referred to as dumplings, but I think they're too big to actually qualify or classify as a dumpling just for me. So there are differences in form. The form is the shape, and preparation is how they're made. So there are differences in how they look and also what goes inside them and how they're prepared. Some are boiled, some are steamed, some are fried. I like the fried ones and the steamed ones.
Well, I like them all. They're each outstanding and unique in their own ways. Boiled dumpling, steamed dumpling, etc., etc.
Delicious.
And here's the last sentence of the first paragraph. It says, based on the following examples that we're going to tell you about, you can decide for yourself whether all dumplings deserve to be classified together. So, yeah, we're probably going to include some pictures of these things in our magazine. And you can also go online to look for pictures of these delicacies from various countries. But I guess before we move on, we should talk about the word dumpling itself. I did try to look this word up. Yeah, why do we say dumpling? The word dump refers to a place where we take our garbage to, or it could also be the verb to dump, like a dump truck has large quantities of materials in them, and then it just unloads it, it dumps it onto the ground. But the definition here was kind of complicated. I guess dump has another meaning in the past, which I won't get into now, so we'll just have to leave it at that. Dumplings just refer to those kinds of food, again, that have kind of a dough outer shell, and then they have stuffing or filling on the inside.
There's another thing I just thought of that sometimes people will call a sticky rice bun or a sticky rice dumpling,
right.
And that's the zongzi. They're actually more... I would consider those more of a, I don't know, what would you call those?
I've heard them use the word tamale, but that's from Mexican.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. So
yeah, and they use flour for that. It is hard to find a word for that. There's no good translation. A lot of Taiwanese friends will say, what do you call this in English? And I said,
like
zongzi.
Rice dumpling or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we generally say zongzi because there's just no
There's
word.
not a good translation. Otherwise, you have to say sticky rice triangle, thing with meat or beans inside. They're all different too. So it's the fun of learning another language and trying to communicate with others. It's fun. So moving on to the next paragraph, we know that in Central and Southern Asia, people have been filling pastry shells with meat and vegetables and then frying them for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Yeah, that's so true. We've had some of these versions of these dishes for a long time. And it looks like it even goes back thousands of years, perhaps. When you're talking about pastry, guys, you're usually talking about those baked goods that are tasty. Typically, they're sweet, but they don't have to be. You have a lot of savory pastry items here in Taiwan, like the egg tart. Right. Is sort of a savory pastry. But our pastries typically are sweeter in the Western world because we like that. Here we're saying pastry is that doughish part, right? You have to make the pastry, which is usually flour, water, and some sort of oil. It could be butter. It could be fat like lard, which is fat from a pig. We're going to talk about how you make that pastry. You roll it out. Sometimes it's quite thin. Sometimes it's a little thicker. It depends on what you're making. And then you're going to stuff or fill that shell. We're talking about the shape being a shell-like shape with meat and vegetables. Sometimes you fill it with sweet stuff like jam or fruit, and then you fry them. So this has been going on for a long, long time. We're going to take a quick break, listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back to continue talking about dumplings.
大家好，我是派老师。今天讲解的是 Unit2-1 word, many dishes, dumplings around the world. 老师想请问大家，台湾有这么多美食小吃可以介绍给外国朋友。如果有外国朋友来，你会介绍哪些给他们吃？如果是我可能会介绍他们吃小笼包、水饺，因为我自己本身就喜欢吃包馅的东西。不过这些食物在英文到底该怎么说呢？有的人会说小笼包、水饺都可以翻译作 dumpling， 你会不会觉得很困惑呢？这个单元可以解决大家的疑惑，我们一起来看这一课的学习重点吧。好，请看到第一段的第一个句子 Well, every country's cuisine is different 一直到 countries 结束。好，请同学特别注意到 while 其实是一个副词连接词，它所连接的副词子句以及主要子句通常呢是有鲜明的对比，所以我们看到 while 所连接的副词子句的部分，每个国家的菜肴、 每个国家的菜是不一样的。Many dishes exist in similar or related forms in multiple countries. 但是呢，后面的主要子句这个部分有很多菜，它们呢形式是类似的，或者是相关的。好，所以这是有所对比的地方。前面副子子句的地方说不一样，而后面主要子句的地方说相似的地方。好，再来 Chinese 饺子 and 小笼包 are referred to as dumplings, but so are 包子 sometimes, despite the differences in forms and preparation. 请同学特别注意到 refer to 的用法。refer to A as B 意思就是把 A 称之为 B。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, let's continue to talk about dumplings. So, as promised, we're going to talk about different kinds of dumplings as they're classified in different countries around the world. So, again, in Central and Southern Asia, people have been filling pastry shells with meat and vegetables and then frying them for hundreds or maybe thousands of years. Frying there, I guess, means deep frying them in some kind of oil. Well, let's go to Persia, which is basically modern-day Iran. The Persian word Samosa is used for this kind of tasty, portable snack. So if you're in Tehran and traveling around Iran there, you might find some street vendors selling this stuff. It's called Samosa. I suppose it's probably written in the Persian script, so it would be probably difficult to figure out unless you've studied Persian. But in any case, if you happen to be there, you could try this kind of dumpling. We call it tasty, and we also refer to it as being portable, which means you can buy it and take it with you. You don't have to eat it in a restaurant. You can even eat it while you're walking. It's that convenient.
They have something quite similar to this, actually, that existed in England, and they wanted to have something that they could take along, take along with them. The workers would work all day in the mines, for example, and they wanted to have something that would keep fresh or taste good, even though it hadn't been in the refrigerator or kept cold. And they had the same similar thing. So it had a crust on the outside, and then you'd put meats inside. Those are good too. So we have this particular word they're using in Persian. And I was telling Tom I couldn't hear the sound of the word on Google Translate because there's no audio for Persian. It's a nice sounding language, though. So if something's portable, it's something you can carry around with you. Some people take portable chairs to the beach, portable umbrellas that they can put out and sit underneath that big umbrella using their chair on the beach instead of a towel on the sand. Portable just means it is something you can carry around with you or take with you. So it's great for long journeys. It lasted longer than some other kinds of foods. And it was this fact that it could be taken for long journeys that contributed to its spread. So it moved from Persia into India. And if you are a fan of Indian food like we are, you've probably already had a samosa, which is also kind of a dumpling-like food. It usually is shaped into a triangle, and it's filled with things like meat sometimes, mostly potatoes, though, and peas, sometimes carrots. I've had onions, carrots in it. So those are good, too. But yeah, those are very popular. Samosa is the Indian word for it. Of course, we just refer to them usually as dumplings.
All right, but of course, if you order these from an Indian restaurant, they're going to be called samosas. And again, they're portable. You can take them along with you, although I don't think dumplings in Taiwan, like shuijiao or zhengjiao or whatever, can be taken with you. I guess you have to eat them on the table there with sauce and chopsticks and stuff like that. So the samosas here and the sanbasag, I hope I said that right, were portable at the time for people working and traveling and stuff like that. And modern samosas are often sold by street vendors, but can also be found on restaurant menus. So if you're touring around India and you're looking for a quick snack, you can probably buy samosas from a street vendor. Or if you're having a nice meal, you can have them in a restaurant as well. They are basically shaped like pyramids and filled with local Indian ingredients such as peas and potatoes. So if you know what a pyramid is, it's basically a three-dimensional triangle like the ones in Egypt, they're pyramids. And of course, that's the shape of a samosa generally or typically, and they're filled with a filling or a stuffing. And these ingredients include peas and potatoes and probably different items depending on where you are in India. If you have a recipe for something, of course, it's going to have various ingredients, the kinds of food that are included in that dish. And indeed, the ingredients here would be peas and potatoes. I guess the ingredients for boiled dumplings here would be like vegetables and pork and stuff like that.
Yeah, 咖喱菜, huh? So samosas can be large, but to the west, on the other side of what was once Persia, dumplings are smaller. We're talking about the country of Turkey. Turkey has something they call manta. It looks like manti in English, but they actually say manta. And you can go on YouTube and see how they're made. There's some wonderful old Turkish ladies who cook them up on the screen. It's fun. So they're diminutive. Diminutive just means extremely small, kind of cute. And they're pockets of lamb, onion, and spices. Those are the ingredients that are put inside. That's the filling. Anything that's stuffed into something else can be called the filling. Don't put an S on it. What's the filling made from or made of? And they would tell you. And then they're served with yogurt on the side or tomato sauce. Those are very familiar sauces in Turkey or in Turkish food. You'll often see yogurt or tomato sauce.
Again, you can probably get them pretty readily in Turkey if you're traveling there. And they're such a beloved part of Turkish culture that making them as small as can be is an unofficial measure of a cook's ability. So here we've got the word beloved. You could also pronounce this word beloved, which means loved or very popular in a certain place. You could refer to your significant other as your beloved. My dear beloved and I are going to go to a nice restaurant tonight to celebrate our anniversary, you could say, for example. So, of course, they're treasured, they are special in Turkish culture, and they're so beloved that they can be very small. And if they are very small, that means the cook is really, really good. So practice that. Practice making those small manta.
Yeah, manta. Yeah, I think when I read the article, I said beloved. They're both correct. I say both. It depends on what I'm looking at. So beloved or beloved. Yeah, so this sounds like something that's quite a big part of their culture. Now, notice here it's an unofficial measure or a standard of whether you can cook or not. There's even an occasional belief, though an outmoded one. Outmoded means old-fashioned, and this is very old-fashioned, that if a woman can make manta small enough to fit 40 of these little triangles on a tablespoon, which is a little bit bigger than a teaspoon. Tablespoon's more like a soup spoon. Then she's proved to other people around that she's ready to marry. Yeah, very outmoded, very old-fashioned. We know today we've got a lot of men in the kitchens now. Occasional is one of our vocabulary words, guys. It just means, every once in a while. It's done infrequently. It's not regular. It's just occasionally. Occasionally, I like to go and eat very, very spicy mala, which is occasionally. It has to be a cold day for me to eat that because I sweat too much when I eat it.
It's an occasional delight for you. And yes, we've got this occasional belief in Turkey, but it is outmoded, which means it's kind of passé. People don't really follow this anymore, but they might. You never know. Some people might do this just for fun, maybe. And the idea is that a woman can make manta small enough to fit 40 on a tablespoon, and then she has proved herself ready to marry. And it's kind of cute there. I can't imagine manta being that small to fit on a tablespoon. They might even be microscopic.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll continue talking about dumplings in our next program, but right now we're going to take a time out and listen to our Chinese teacher.
那我们接着看到第二段第三个句子 It's great for long journeys, a fact that contributed to its spread from Persia into India, where it is known as a samosa, and has been called a dumpling. 这里呢，请同学特别注意到 a fact that contributed to 这个地方。那我们知道说，从前面 it's great for long journeys 这边的 it 所指的呢，当然就是波斯版的饺子，叫 Samosa。那这个 Samosa 呢，它其实很适合长程携带。那后面的 a fact that 其实呢，所代替的就是前面的这件事实。It's great for long journeys， 适合长程旅程携带。那后面，请同学看到有一个关系子句 that contributed to its spread。这边的 contributed to 其实呢就是造成、构成的意思，所以这边其实是一个在逻辑上是因果关系的意思，就是因为这样子的食物适合长途旅程携带，因此从波斯传到印度。再来，请看到第4个句子 Modern samosas are often sold by street vendors, but can also be found on restaurant menus. 那请同学特别注意的是，现在 samosa 通常呢在街头的摊贩我们就可以买得到。那后面呢，他在说其实餐厅里面也有卖，不过他不是说 also sold by restaurants， 他是换了一种说法。They can also be found on restaurant menus. 如果从字面上来翻译，就是餐厅菜单上也看得到。不过实际上就是说 Samosa 呢，在街头的小吃有卖，在餐厅呢也有卖。好，接下来我们看到第3段，前面所说的饺子、小笼包，甚至于包子，还有印度的 Samosa 体积都比较大，而土耳其的 Mandi则非常小巧，像馄饨一样。请同学看到第2个句子 Turkish Manta are diminutive pockets of lamb, onion and spices 这个句子。这里说到土耳其的 Mandi 是包着羊肉、洋葱和香料的小袋子，水煮后配上优格或是番茄的酱汁。那在英文里面，我们到底要怎么说配上什么东西呢？这里请同学看得到，它后面有一个关系子句，从 that 开始 that are boiled and served with yogurt or tomato sauce。 这 that 所代替的呢，就是前面的 Mandi 呢，在水煮熟以后，那我们接着就可以配上优格，所以 served with 就是配上优格或者呢番茄的酱汁。接着再请同学看到第3个句子 They're such a beloved part of Turkish culture that making them as small as can be。 好，这个部分请同学注意到 Mandi 是土耳其文化当中如此深受喜爱的一部分，所以到底能做到多小，常常呢都会让人家拿来衡量一个厨师的能力。请同学特别注意的是第3个句子里面这个 such that 它其实是一个连接词， such 后面呢的名词是单数 a beloved part， 要先加上这个冠词之后 such a beloved part of Turkish culture， 它是如此深受喜爱的一部分，那以至于后面 that 后面呢所加的是一个子句 making them as small as can be is an unofficial measure。 这个 measure 所指的就是衡量的意思。好，以上就是我们今天 Day 1的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
That is it for today. Thanks for listening, and please join us again next time for another edition of our program. And of course, you should join us next time because we are going to continue to talk about yummy dumplings.
Yeah.
Please join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.